5 Scary Clown Stories. 1. As a child, I had always found clowns to be unsettling. Their painted-on smiles, exaggerated gestures, and unpredictable behavior sent shivers down my spine. So you can only imagine the terror that gripped me when I found myself face to face with one on a misty Halloween night. I'd been invited to a friend's Halloween party, and despite my reservations, I decided to put on a brave face and attend. The party was being held in an old, decrepit mansion on the outskirts of town. The atmosphere was eerie from the start, with the full moon casting eerie shadows on the dilapidated walls. Upon arriving, I couldn't help but notice the decorations, a mishmash of cobwebs, flickering candles, and grotesque props that seemed to have come straight from a horror movie. As I mingled with the other guests, I noticed a figure standing alone in a dimly lit corner of the room. It was a clown, donned in a mishmashed, tattered costume that appeared to have seen better days. Avoiding eye contact, I continued to chat with friends, trying to push the unsettling feeling aside, but as the night wore on, I couldn't shake the sensation that the clown's gaze was fixated on me. Every time I stole a glance in its direction, I found its eyes locked onto mine, an unnerving grin stretching across its face. As the clock struck midnight, the party seemed to take on a more sinister tone. The laughter grew hushed, and the atmosphere became suffocating. It was as if an unforeseen force was weaving a web of dread around us all. Seeking a breath of fresh air, I excused myself and made my way to the garden outside. The moonlight illuminated the garden in an eerie glow, casting elongated shadows that danced along the ground. I walked further into the garden, my footsteps echoing softly in the stillness. But just as I began to relax, a rustling sound caught my attention. I turned, and there, standing at the edge of the garden, was the clown. My heart pounded in my chest as I took a step back, my breath catching in my throat. The clown's gaze was fixed on me, its painted smile seeming to widen impossibly. It began to move towards me with slow, deliberate steps, its oversized shoes making a soft thud on the ground. "Having fun, my dear?" it asked, its voice a sickening blend of honeyed sweetness and malevolence. I couldn't muster a response, frozen in terror as the clown grew closer, its every movement exaggerated and unsettling. I turned to flee, my instincts screaming at me to escape the nightmarish creature, but my feet felt like they were glued to the ground, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't move. The clown's laughter grew louder, echoing in my ears as it closed in the distance between us. Just as it reached out a gloved hand towards me, I snapped out of my paralysis. Adrenaline surged through my veins, and I sprinted back towards the mansion, not daring to look back. I burst through the doors, gasping for air, and turned to see if the clown had followed. But to my immense relief, there was no sign of it. The party had taken on a more normal tone, as if the eerie presence has dissipated. I scanned the room, my heart still racing, but the clown was nowhere to be found. It had all but been a hallucination, a product of my own fears? I couldn't be sure, but I knew one thing for certain. I would never be able to shake off the feeling of those painted eyes watching me, and that twisted grin haunting my nightmares. 2. I've always had an inexplicable fear of clowns. Their exaggerated features, painted-on smiles, and unpredictable behavior just sent shivers down my spine. Little did I know that my deepest fears would soon become a horrifying reality. It was a chilly autumn evening when my friends convinced me to go to a local circus that had just come to town. Despite my reservations, I reluctantly agreed, thinking that maybe facing my fears head-on would finally help me overcome it. The circus was set up in a large, dimly lit tent, and the air was thick with the scent of popcorn and excitement. As we settled into our seats, I tried to focus on the anticipation of a thrilling show rather than my unease. The lights dimmed further, and the spotlight centered on a red and yellow striped curtain at the center of the ring. A hushed murmur spread through the audience as the curtain slowly began to rise, revealing a group of clowns standing in a row. My heart raced as their painted face came into view, each with a wide, toothy grin that seemed to stretch unnaturally. The audience erupted into applause, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The clowns' movements were synchronized, their exaggerated gestures almost mechanical in nature. As the performance continued, my unease only deepened. The clowns seemed to be getting closer and closer to the edge of the ring, their eyes fixed on the audience, and in particular, on me. I tried to brush off the sensation, attributing it to my overreactive imagination. But then, in an instant, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the tent into darkness. My heart pounded in my chest as panic set in. The darkness seemed suffocating, and I could hear the muffled whispers of the audience members around me. Suddenly, a single spotlight illuminated the center of the ring, revealing a lone clown standing there. Its face was painted in garish colors, and its grin seemed to stretch impossibly wide. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead as the clown began to laugh, a haunting sound that echoed through the tent. The laughter grew louder and more manic, filling the air with an almost tangible malevolence. I wanted to look away, to escape this nightmare, but my gaze was locked onto the clown's piercing eyes. As the laughter reached a crescendo, the clown's features began to contort and shift, as if its face was melting and reforming before my eyes. The sight was so grotesque that bile rose in my throat, and I had to fight the urge to scream. The clown's laughter abruptly stopped, and it extended a gloved hand towards me. Its elongated fingers reached out as if to touch me. I couldn't bear it any longer. With a surge of adrenaline, I tore my gaze away from the clown and bolted towards the exit, pushing through the darkness. The sound of my pounding footsteps seemed to reverberate through the tent, drowning out the laughter that still echoed in my mind. Finally, I burst out into the cool night air, gasping for breath and blinking away tears of terror. My friends found me outside, clearly concerned by my disheveled appearance. I tried to explain what I had seen, but the words felt hollow, inadequate in capturing the sheer horror of the experience. They exchanged worried glances and led me away from the circus, reassuring me that it was all just a trick, part of the show. But deep down, I knew what I had seen was real. The image of that distorted clown's face, the haunting laughter, and the feeling of its gaze would forever be etched into my memory. And no matter how hard I tried, I knew I could never escape the suffocating grip of my fear of clowns. 3. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the quiet suburban street. I was walking home from a late-night study session, my backpack heavy with textbooks and exhaustion settling on my bones. As I walked, the echo of my footsteps seemed to be magnifying in the stillness, creating an eerie soundtrack to the darkness. I quickened my pace, eager to get home and into the safety of my own space, But as I turned the corner onto a dimly lit alleyway that served as a shortcut, a chill ran down my spine. There, parked at the far end of the alley, was a rusty old van. Its faded paint and dented exterior gave it an unsettling, abandoned appearance. Curiosity and unease filled me, but a strange fascination drew me closer to the van. As I got nearer, I noticed a flickering light inside, casting eerie shadows on the wall. My heart raced as I realized that the van was not empty. There were figures moving inside, their silhouettes dancing in the dim glow. Hesitating for a moment, I contemplated turning back and taking a longer route home. But before I could make my decision, the van's side door creaked open, and a blast of cold air rushed out, sending shivers down my spine. Out stepped a group of clowns, their mismatched costumes and exaggerated features illuminated by a single swinging lantern. My breath caught in my throat as they emerged, one by one, their painted smiles seeming to widen in the dim light. They moved in slow, synchronized manner, their oversized shoes making soft thuds against the pavement. I could feel their eyes on me, even from beneath their painted masks, and a sense of dread washed over me. I tried to swallow my fear and take a step back, but my feet felt rooted to the spot. It was as if an invisible force held me in place, trapping me in the alleyway with these eerie, unnerving clowns. They formed a loose circle around me, their laughter a twisting symphony that filled the air, sending chills down my spine. One of the clowns took a deliberate step forward, its painted hand reaching out as if in invitation. The metallic glint of a knife caught the dim light, and my heart hammered in my chest. The other clowns continued their unnerving laughter, their eyes fixed on me with a hungry intensity that made my skin crawl. Panic surged within me, breaking through the paralysis that had gotten me gripped. With a surge of adrenaline, I tore my gaze away from the clowns and sprinted back down the alley, my heart pounding in my ears. Their laughter seemed to follow me, echoing through the night, and I didn't dare to look back. I burst out onto the main street, gasping for air, nearly stumbling as I looked around. There was no sign of the van or the clowns. It was as if they had just disappeared into thin air, leaving behind only a lingering sense of dread. I hurried the rest of the way home, my mind racing with the nightmarish encounter. As I locked my door and collapsed onto my bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that those clowns had been more than just a twisted illusion. Even in the safety of my own room, I couldn't escape the haunting sound of their laughter echoing in my ears, long into the night. 4. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of wind against the window pane seemed to send shivers down my spine. I had always thought that the fear of clowns were irrational, born from an overreactive imagination, but now, as I sat in my dimly lit living room, I knew that my fear was all too real. It all began a week ago when I had attended a carnival in the nearby town. It was meant to be a night of fun and laughter, a way to forget the stresses of life. The circus tent was filled with colorful lights and excited chatter of families, all eager to be entertained. I'd even laughed at their antics of the clowns and their oversized shoes and exaggerated outfits, thinking that perhaps my fears were finally over. But then, in the midst of the show, I had caught a glimpse of a clown that sent a chill down my spine. Its eyes, though hidden behind painted-on red circles, seemed to pierce through the crowd and lock onto mine. Its smile, a wide, sinister curve, held a promise of something dark and unsettling. I tried to look away, to convince myself that it was just my imagination, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the clown's gaze was fixed solely on me. After the show, I quickly left the carnival grounds, my unease growing with every step. I glanced back over my shoulder, half expecting to see the clown following me, but the path was empty. I told myself that I was just being paranoid, that clowns couldn't possibly stalk someone. But as the days went by, my unease turned into a gnawing sense of dread that I couldn't shake. Strange things began to happen. I would catch glimpses of movement out of the corner of my eye, only to turn and find nothing there. I started hearing faint laughter, a haunting echo that seemed to follow me everywhere I went. My sleep became plagued by nightmares of that sinister clown, its painted smile, a twisted mockery of joy. And then came the day when I found a single red balloon tied to my front doorknob. My heart raced as I stared at it, the memory of that clown's gaze burning in my mind. I tore the balloon from the doorknob and threw it in the trash, trying to convince myself that it was just some sick prank. But I couldn't escape the feeling that I was being watched, that the clown was lurking somewhere in the shadows, biding its time. Each day, the unease grew stronger. The feeling of being stalked by an unseen presence became overwhelming. I started avoiding mirrors, half expecting to see that painted smile leering at me from behind my own reflection. The laughter grew louder, filling my ears even when I was alone in the silence of my own home. I knew I couldn't go on like this. I had to confront whatever was tormenting me, even if it meant facing the very thing I feared the most. Gathering every ounce of courage I had left, I ventured out into the night, back to the carnival grounds where it had first began. The carnival was deserted, the lights dimmed, and the laughter silenced. But as I walked deeper into the empty tent, I felt a presence behind me, a sensation that made my skin crawl. Slowly, I turned around, and there it was, the clown, its painted face inches from mine, its grin a twisted nightmare. Terror seized me, but I refused to let it control me any longer. With a primal scream, I lunged at the clown, my fists connecting with its face. It stumbled back, its laughter turning into a guttural growl. I kept hitting, my fear and anger fueling each blow. And then, just as suddenly it had appeared, the clown vanished, leaving behind only a lingering echo of its laughter. I stood there, gasping for breath, my heart pounding in my chest. The tent was empty, the darkness surrounding me complete. But I knew that I had faced my fear, that I had confronted the very thing that had been tormenting me. As I walked out of the tent into the night, I felt a sense of liberation, a newfound strength that I had never known before. The clown might have stalked me, but I had fought back, and in doing so, I had taken back control of my life. 5. I've always loved the art of clowning. The ability to make people laugh, to bring joy to their lives, was something I cherished deeply. So when I had the opportunity to join a traveling circus as a female clown, I jumped at the chance. Little did I know, this experience would take me down a path of horror that I could never have imagined. The circus was a world of vibrant colors, lively music, and a camaraderie among performers that was unlike anything I had ever known. I had my own unique costume, complete with oversized shoes, a rainbow wig, and a red rubber nose. I relished the attention and laughter my antics brought from the audience, and I reveled in the thrill of performing under the big top. One night, after the show, as the performers mingled and celebrated in the circus tent, I caught the eye of a male clown named Jack. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with a mischievous glint in his eyes that was both intriguing and intimidating. Jack's act was different from mine. He played the role of a prankster, pulling off hilarious and unexpected tricks. As the weeks passed, Jack and I grew closer, sharing stories and laughter during our downtime. There was a chemistry between us, an unspoken understanding that went beyond words. It wasn't long before our camaraderie turned into something more, and we became inseparable, both on and off the stage. However, as our relationship deepened, so did the unsettling occurrences that seemed to plague the circus. Strange accidents began to happen during our performances. Ropes would snap unexpectedly, props would malfunction, and sometimes a sense of foreboding would hang in the air just before something went wrong. The other performers whispered about bad luck and curses, but Jack and I brushed it off, convinced that it was just a series of coincidences. One night, after a particularly successful show, Jack and I decided to explore the circus grounds under the cover of darkness. The moon cast eerie shadows across the deserted tents and rides, giving the place an otherworldly aura. As we walked, a sense of unease settled over me, but I pushed it aside, focusing on the thrill of our adventure. But then, as we reached the heart of the circus grounds, we stumbled upon something that froze our blood. It was a shrine of some sorts, a collection of faded photographs, weathered trinkets, and twisted symbols. The air seemed to grow colder, and a whispering wind carried faint, haunting laughter. As I looked closer at the photographs, I realized with a sinking feeling that they were images of past performers from the circus, all wearing clown makeup and costumes. Some of their faces were familiar, and dread gnawed at my insides. Jack and I exchanged fearful glances, the realization sinking in that this circus was hiding a dark secret. Suddenly, the ground beneath us trembled, and the shadows seemed to shift and elongate. Figures emerged from the darkness, their painted faces twisted with grotesque smiles. Clowns, much like us, but different, distorted, malevolent. Their laughter filled the air, a chilling cacophony that echoed through the night. Jack and I turned to run, but the clowns were everywhere, surrounding us with their eerie presence. Their laughter grew louder, more menacing, and I could feel their eyes on us, their gaze piercing through the darkness. We ran through the labyrinthine paths of the circus grounds, the twisted forms of the clowns always just behind us. Finally, we burst through the entrance of the circus tent, gasping for breath, our hearts pounding in our chests. The clowns from the shrine were gone, leaving behind only an empty, unsettling silence. Jack and I never spoke about that night again. But the memory of those haunting clowns would forever be etched in our minds. As the days went on, the accidents continued, growing more frequent and more dangerous. The atmosphere within the circus grew heavy with tension, the joy and laughter replaced by fear and suspicion. Jack and I began to unravel, our bond strained under the weight of the horrors we had witnessed. One fateful night, as the circus prepared for another show, Jack and I confronted the reality of our situation. We knew we had to leave, to escape the grip of the cursed circus before it consumed us completely. And so, with heavy hearts, we said our farewells and disappeared into the night, leaving behind the world of clowns and laughter for good. But even now, as I recount this tale, I can't shake the feeling of those malevolent clowns still lingering in the shadows, their twisted laughter echoing in the recesses of my mind. The memory of that night, the horror we encountered, is a haunting reminder that even the world of laughter and joy can have a dark, sinister side. Which story caught your attention the most? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. Until next time, stay safe. And thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Check out my website in the description below to see what I'm writing, And just below that are some suggestions related to what we talked about today. Peace.